This week on the show, we go to Morphettville. I look at Flemington. I think the track intel around the circle in particular at Flemington is going to be important. You need to listen to that. The Group 1 set, there's plenty of guts in that. Obviously, we've got the Turnbull Stakes, we've got the Epsom Handicap, the Metrop, and the Flight Stakes. We're going to deep diving all of those races. JJ's set, my set at Flemington. Don't snap. There's 7 of them. They're all don't snap. So if you like them, I'd think I'd be waiting till right at the death. You're going to get your better price, more cash in your pocket. And pin the tail. Last week it was I Wish I Win. SP for PointsBet was $5. I got $5. That means it's 7-4. Seems like it's all over. This week it's via Sistina. Very interesting horse. I'm a little bit bigger than JJ. You'll have to listen to find out what we are. This is the Jules and JJ show. Hello and welcome to the Jules and JJ show. My name is Julian Valence, joined remotely, obviously, in the Adelaide Hills, James Jordan. JJ, you made it back from Melbourne okay? You're alive?
Yeah, tail between my legs. Might have a bit of vision to look at later, but it was they say character building. It's not really character building. Depressing is a better word. It was a depressing weekend in a few ways. The footy was terrible. Friday night we didn't get the result. Saturday we definitely didn't get the result, but we push on and we build some resilience.
Yeah, resilience is important. They say it's character building. I will say, though, just very quickly, the punters out there, obviously we went to the Valley, didn't work out with Growing Empire. We go to Sandown with the Samurai Mine. It doesn't work out. It still had a little bit left in it that day, and it continues to, when we went to, I can't remember the name, but somewhere in Oakley, where anytime you walk into a building and there's no windows and you get free soft drink, you know you're in for one hell of an hour and a half.
Yeah, we stumbled upon a pot of gold there, didn't we? One of the most depressing places in the world. Thank God we didn't remember the name because it would be up for some form of defamation, but it was horrendous.
I don't think it would be defamation because there's no slander in it whatsoever. It's the truth.
Truth, correct. It was a bad joint. But anyway, we went, second half was better at a more favourable location.
All right, very good. Let's get to the track intel for this week. Okay, JJ, you're going to kick us off with the track analysis. We're at Morphettville. What else have you got for us that might be able to steer the punters into what to look for?
It's a good 4. At the moment, it's forecast probably to be that. If we get a little bit of rain, which there is some on the horizon, we might be in the 5 range. We know it does hold the moisture, the outer track. So work on somewhere between a 4 and a 5. The rail is in the true. The last sort of couple of times it's been in the true. If there's some moisture, like if we get 3 or 4 mils, Thursday, Friday or Saturday, maybe that inside 2 or 3 lanes might not be the A ground, but assuming we don't get any rain, I think it'll race pretty fairly. The wind's not overly important. It's a 28 kilometre westerly, which if anything just blows them a little bit off the rail down the side, and it's a bit of a headwind in the home straight. But at 28 k's an hour for 380 metres or whatever it is, it probably isn't going to have a huge impact on how things are run. So I think it'll race pretty fairly. Generally in the chute, you don't need to draw low. So don't look, gates 1 and 2 is a big positive in the chute, but it should race pretty fairly.
All right, very good. So that's the intel for Morphettville. And just keep an eye on those things that hover in the sky sometimes. They can sometimes look white and grey. If some stuff falls out of it, then you might have to look at what happens on the inside. Flemington in Victoria this week, obviously it's Turnbull Stakes Day. We're out 9 metres the entire circuit. Now, again, like what we did last week with Moonee Valley, we've got it in the good/soft because we're expecting up to 10 mils of rain Friday and then another up to 8 mils on the Saturday. Now, we know Flemington's a great draining track, especially this time of the year. But if we do get that rain during race day, I think it's going to impact and we're going to end up on a soft. So just be mindful of that if we do get it, if we don't get much of it, then we'll be on the good surface. But again, I think we'll probably be on a good 4, worst case scenario, soft 5. So should give every horse their chance. Look, it's a 15 to 25 kilometre northwesterly and very similar to what JJ spoke about in Adelaide. It's going to have no real impact at all on how these races are run and won. So we've got no real issue there. Up the straight, when the rail goes out, it just becomes a little bit more even. Obviously, the last 2.5, 3 years, we've really focused on middle to wide barriers, especially when the rail's close to the true. When we go out to 9 metres, the inside evens up a lot more in terms of the lanes. And also, if it does become in the soft sort of 5, 6, 7 range, if we do get that rain at all hits on race day, the inside actually is a bit of an advantage. So just be mindful of that on the straight races. Circle, off speed and advantage. So leaders, a low percentage play, which is usually the norm at Flemington, except for when we get that southerly wind. Sometimes we saw once last year in the Carnival and probably about 6 weeks ago at Flemington as well. That's not the case this week. So again, leaders fall off the cliff a little bit, off speed and advantage at Flemington. So there's a bit there, Circle in particular, to pay attention to with this rail out 9 metres. That's a track intel for Adelaide and Melbourne. Okay, Fox factors this week. JJ, you knocked it out of the park last week with those small fields in terms of looking at severe positioning. There were some horses that sort of either sat at the back or sat at the front that won the race in those small fields last week. We also spoke about, don't worry about backing the outsider in these small fields. Again, no outsider won those small fields, so the numbers don't lie. We're going to look at early 2-year-old races. We've got a couple in Sydney, JJ. We've got one, obviously, at Flemington as well. So they're all unraced horses. I suppose and the punters that would follow me know this right off the bat, is that I don't play into these races because I just don't have enough data around them and I just can't work off them. There's only so many hours in the day that you can work off. But there's a couple of things that I sort of looked at, and then I just want to see if you identify with any of them when you're looking at these kinds of races. Obviously, the breeding, the trainer-jockey combo, trials and jump outs if you've got time to look at them, and then obviously the last factor, which when it comes to race day, is the market support. Is there any of those four, or is there even an external one that I haven't mentioned, that you look at when you're drilling down into these early 2-year-old races when all horses are unraced, unsighted?
Well, I think the first thing is the trainers that are good at it. You often see every now and then you'll get a horse like a boom horse that comes out of a country trainer's camp, and invariably I stay away from them. I'd rather be with the trainers that are, I guess, the biggest city trainers that have got success with 2-year-olds in the past. I like to start with them as a starting point. Obviously, the trials and jump outs, that's what you're going on with these sort of races. I'm always wary of a horse, of a 2-year-old that trials too well. Like at that stage of their career, every unbelievable trial could be their grand final and could knock them out. They might be there on the Thursday and they're gone on the Friday. So I really like to see horses that have had multiple jump outs or trials, but I hate if they rate, like if they win by 10 and they run a second quicker than anything, I'm always a bit like, oh, I'd rather them have won by 2 in good time on the bridle and it being their second or third jump out or trial. I just like to see that sort of that pattern rather than something that just blows the socks off everything else. So that's sort of what I'd say. Beware the unbelievable trial from a camp that don't historically have an unbelievable record for 2-year-olds.
That's a really good point there for the punters out there. That's the Fox factors for this week. Early 2-year-old races, we'll see more of them in the next few weeks. Okay, JJ, let's have a look at the Group 1 set. And there's a bit in this. We've got, obviously, the Turnbull Stakes from Flemington, and then we've got the 3 Group 1s from Randwick up in Sydney. We're going to kick off with the Turnbull Stakes. So I'll just set it up in terms of how I thought the map was. There's a bit in this race in terms of Via Sistina and what to do with it, but we'll get to her later with the pin the tail. But in terms of the map and how you think this race sets up, I thought there wasn't much speed at all, and if the speed was going to come, it probably had to come from out wide. Horses like Boy d'Argent, Ilias, who comes down from Sydney, I think probably has to roll forward from that gate if they want to win the Turnbull Stakes. I think Duke de Sesta rolls forward, and I think probably a horse like Young Verda from that gate can probably sit in the first 4 or 5. And then it becomes really tricky for horses like Via Sistina, Sharp and Smart, those kinds of horses. Weddle, all those horses, they're going to go back and then try and find a card in 3 wide, which sometimes can be a really good spot at Flemington and possibly can happen on Saturday as well. But that's how I set this map up, that I thought there wasn't a lot of speed. Once they find their position, I think they'll really try and throw the anchor down. But that's what I thought those first 4, sort of those 2 from out wide, Boy d'Argent, Elias, and then obviously Duke de Sesta and Young Verda, who draw a little bit cuter. Any difference to that, JJ, from how you looked at the Turnbull Stakes, or any edges, angles you wanted to talk to for the punters?
No, but the only thing I'll say is I often think with biggish fields, if you think there's going to be a 3-wide line, like there's enough horses for them to be unlikely for them to slot into fence and running line, I just feel like that 3-wide line can keep them honest to an extent. Like if you're 3-wide out inside the speed and they're really dropping anchor, you're more likely to let it slide than if you're all in your position and you think I'm going to be the first one out. you're sort of already stuffed if you're 3 wide no cover. So it does keep the pace a little bit on us. So I thought if there's a 3 wide line, there might be, they wouldn't go too slow.
Yep. And I think there probably will be a 3 wide line. There's just a few of these horses that I think are just not going to be able to find a spot and are not going to like snag all the way back and give up so much positioning. And obviously we know too, just sometimes travelling that 3 wide line at Flemington can be a major plus and you get out to the crown of the track. So by that stage we'll know how Flemington's playing, but I think you're right. I think the 3 wide line could be important in the Turnbull Stakes. Let's get to the Epsom Handicap. I think this is a really solid, good handicap type of race. Not so much about the Metropolitan we'll get to soon, but again, the Epsom I thought was really interesting from a map point of view, and I've got it here as, we look at these big fields and we go, oh, it's going to be a really genuine tempo. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And I look at this race and I go, well, Major Beale goes forward. I think Regina probably goes forward as well, who won the race last year with 50 kilos. Other than that, there's not huge amounts of speed. And whether they'll want to just try and find their spot, this is probably a lot of these horses one chance to win this kind of a big race, big Group 1 handicap. They're not going to want to be the horse that actually burns it at 3 wide and gives the opportunity to something else. So I thought it was tricky from that point of view in terms of a map, because I didn't think there was much speed at all, which is probably going against the grain of what people think with an Epsom handicap, JJ.
Well, maybe, I guess the horses with the light weight, I think when you get into a horse that's got 51 kilos or something in this race, I think we've got no weight, let's really make it, let's either take off a bit sooner or let's make sure there's genuine tempo and the others have to carry their weight. Now, the difference is in this race, there's a lot of horses with not much weight. So whether they factor that in and they don't go overly quick, we'll see. But I actually don't mind the race as a betting race. Sort of looking through my market against the market, the sort of 3 horses I thought were over the odds were Cheerwolf. I know it's dropping back, which I really wish it wasn't. Dropping back in distance to the mile, but I think it's over the odds. I thought Chrysaor, it was set at $34 yesterday, I reckon. Good odds. I think it's a bit shorter now. And Tom Kitten, I think, has got a good chance as well. I know the market might not like him, but I think he's a chance of peaking in this race. So there's sort of 3 I thought were good odds. You didn't ask me about the Turnbull. I like Buckaroo, just in case, if you don't mind going back a bit. Just think the 2-week linear progression, it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. A lot of the others have got sort of question marks around them, and he's obviously proven at the level winning last start. But back on the Epsom, they're the 3 I thought were overs, Cheerwolf, Chrysaor and Tom Kitten. You don't mind Chrysaor as well, is that right?
Yeah, it comes out of an enormous race last start. Knocked us off, actually. We were pretty keen on Nicolino Vito, and it ran really well. But Chrysaor won that race, and we were sort of looking out for where it was going to go to next. And it decided to bite the bullet in the Epsom. And I think at that early price, I was happy to have something on it. I'm sort of with you as well. I'm sort of playing around the horses at the pointy end of the market, and I'm with horses at a bigger price. I've also backed Nugget, which I think they sort of put up $34. He's always got a big run in him. I thought he was okay last start. I've backed McHale, who was really good first up. He's just got to be able to do it again second up, but he's down in the weights, 50 kilos. I like that. And there was another one, the leader, Major Beale. I just thought it was the one that was going to probably get it out in front and might be hard to run down. So I sort of backed those 4 horses at bigger prices because I thought I had the market probably a little bit flatter than what the current market is, which is quite flat in itself, very open. I just couldn't get those horses sort of at the pointy end of the market as short as what the market did. So it sets up to be a really good Epsom handicap, as you say, JJ. The Metrop, I can't suggest that this is going to be an outstanding race. I mean, these horses still might be able to go on and be competitive in a Caulfield Cup, Melbourne Cup. We know it's probably going to be a bit of a low year in terms of those 2 cups. So coming out and winning a Metropolitan convincingly might be the answer. But when you look at it on paper, I think this is a race got plenty of speed in it. Horses like Serpentine. There's also got the issue here that there's 2 or 3 horses that are also in the Bart Cummings as well at Flemington. We still don't know which way they're going to go. A horse like Berkshire Breeze in particular, who's probably going to make the, at least roll forward, especially at Flemington, could roll forward in a Metrop as well. We don't know where he's going to go. So there's a bit to play out here. But I found this race more so than the Epsom, not as exciting, but also a lot more tougher. But what I will say is you're going to need a really tough 2,400 metre horse stayer to win this race because they're not going to sit up here. I think this is going to be a genuine tempo. You're going to need the miles in your legs. Yeah,
I sort of find that generally the further you step up in distance, the less intrigue, I suppose, there is around the race. But look, this race, there are all these sort of handicaps or lessons in weight drops. Like so many of them, are running well with 58 and they drop to 50 and you think, oh, wow. But you've got so many that do it. You really have to work out which ones are going to fully appreciate that, either in their racing pattern or they've got the fitness to go along with it or they've got a turn of foot. So it's not as easy as just overlaying the weight drop with their sort of standard ratings and coming up with a number. I think the art is trying to work out which ones are going to benefit the most from them. In the Metro, I thought Zardozi and First Light were the two that were over the odds. Just think they're both, pretty well weighted in this. I think their prep's been good enough to think they can run a race here. So Zardozi and First Light for me in the Metro. But as you said, I'm pretty wide, as you are in most of these races. It's hard to sort of dial in on one at the shorts, but I think those two will run well.
Yeah, First Light, I'm with you on that. On the quick 7-day backup, which it has done before and did fail, but I think there was excuses around that. They sort of rolled forward, and from that gate too, I think they can settle in the first 5 or 6. I know it did get back last start in that small field, but it's got the ability to settle in sort of the first half of the field. Wouldn't be surprised with that lightweight they use that. I thought Manzoice, now third up, would be ready to explode at 2,400 metres. It might be half a run short, but I thought it was over the odds as well. They were the two that I wanted to sort of play in this race at bigger prices. Last Group 1 race we're going to get to, JJ, I think is probably a lot easier because it's a smaller field and there's an unbeaten filly in it called Autumn Glow. The way the map sets up for me is from that inside draw. I think they probably lead with her with James McDonald. I think they try and put it to bed early. They did show their hand last start. She never shown that versatility in her first few starts. Then he banged her outside leader, and I thought that was great to show that she had that ability to be able to do it. The way I see this race set up, maybe Snow in May is a really interesting horse, because if they want to win this race, they're going to have to sit outside Autumn Glow to make it interesting. If they go back, forget about it. I marked her around $1.70. She's a bit shorter than that, so I'm not going to be launching into her. But for me, Autumn Glow, with the way the map set up, I thought she'd be the one. Any difference there, mate?
No, I've got a mark of $1.68 in a 100% market. I think, as you said, he lobbed outside the lead in the T-Rose, controlled it. I think for this race, you'll see him more aggressive. He probably, not that he gave the others a chance, but she took a little while to build and she was strong late. I think if he does lob in front and can control the speed, I think he'll ramp it up more significantly and more aggressively from probably the 700. So just watch for that tactically, but she's the horse to beat. It's hard to make a case for the others. She'd have to fail, I think, for the others to win.
Yep, I think that's a very good point. And it's really interesting as we watch this race, punters out there, as JJ says, she probably doesn't have that electric turn of foot. So this will be her last run in the prep. Look for James McDonald too, as James said, wind it up maybe at the 700, 800 metres, just to take the guts out of those ones that might be travelling a little bit better. They're all sort of probably going to get to 1,600 metres maybe for the first time as well. So good point from JJ. That is the Group 1 set for this week. All right, JJ, 2 from 3 last week. Exceptional. I think you're going to probably give up on that Raw Grunt horse, but that's just another thing.
Oh.
Let's go to this week. It's Morphettville, and I think you got 3 again. So where do we start off?
I do. Can't just blame Raw Grunt because the market was completely against it. So I've got to blame myself for that. The other 2 were good, but gee, he was poor. 3 again, as you said. The first one comes up in race number 2, Athanatos. I'm going against Gold Rush Guru, who's a horse I've tipped a couple of times. It can certainly win, but I just didn't like that it hung late last start. They probably got the tactics wrong. They went too slow, but it hung. They replaced Caitlin Jones, who is a left-hander, with another left-handed apprentice, Taylor Johnston. So, I don't know. I would have put a right-hander on if it was mine. So I think this race is sort of a little bit ripe. There's only 3 hopes in the race. I'll touch on a don't snap I've got later on, which I think will almost double in price, which means the others in this small field should probably hold their price. I reckon Athanatos can run very well here. It is a maiden still. It's found some decent maidens. When you're watching a horse that hasn't won for a few, you can sort of look at the tapes and see, is it trying? Is it sort of having a look and pulling back? Or is it actually having a red hot crack? And this horse is having a crack. It's just found a few too good for it. But I think it can win this race. It can lob handy. I don't think they go too quick in the race. Lockie Neindorf rides. I think it'll be very hard to beat in race number 2. I've got a marked favourite, currently second pick. Wouldn't surprise me if it does sort of firm up a touch. The 2 other horses I like, one's in race number 7. Now, I've never done the each way 1x3 play yet in the last sort of 3 months of this show. This is the first one, Carrarada in race 7. Now, the reason is it's 1 from 22, which is it makes sense. It gets its own age group for the first time in a little while. In its 22 start career, it's raced against the fillies and mares 4 times. It's never missed a place in any of those 4 runs. Thought its last start was good. It was probably knocked over and unlucky not to finish a length closer over the 1,050. It rises in trip today, another furlong, which will really suit it. I think the tempo's there, that it can probably just slot in midfield and have the last crack at them. I know it doesn't win out of turn, but I think it's got a great sort of chance each way at about that $6.50 quote. I've backed it. I've had a lot more for the place than I have for the win, so that would be my suggestion there. And in the last race, Tipper is the horse. Gee, it's genuine. Probably one of the most genuine horses in the state. Tactically versatile. I'd say they'll push 4. There's not much speed in this race, and they've got the claim. It was good in the Ballot Cup last start, which was obviously a stronger race. Probably in the right part of the track, the way it was playing, but I thought it was solid enough. There's not a lot of speed in this, and I think it can roll forward and probably control it. Motor Ace will likely lead them, but I think if Tipper can sit second, it can get past it in the straight. Currently sort of $2.93 around that quote. I think it'll probably hold up, but if it happens to drift out, I think it's worth having a decent crack at. But even at sort of $3, I think it's worth a bet. Tipper in the last.
Very good. So there's the 3 selections in behind me for JJ's South Australian set. Okay, let's go to my Victorian set at Flemington. 3 horses as well, but just playing into the 2 races. It's a really tricky day. There's a bit to play out here, but starting with race 4, number 4, Delicious Boulevard. We're with it last start and it ran really well. Ran second to Lilac, which we were also within that same race. Just had a different form line. Look, this race overall really slow, but I love the last 400, 200. This horse more or less was just out the back, was only second up, and then just really stormed home. I think from a really much cuter barrier on Saturday, they can settle in the first 4 or 5. Again, I don't think there's much speed in this race at all, and I think this horse has got the best turn of foot. Now, it's got to get to 1,600 metres. It's by Snitzel, and I'm not massive on breeding, but there could be a slight concern. This horse does over-race a little bit. That 1,600 metres is a stretch for it, but I like the fact that it is going to possibly be a really slowly run race, and it can settle in the first 3 or 4. And I think that's going to help. It's only third up this prep 2 as well, so I don't think it's over the top. I don't think that was its peak performance last start. I think its peak performance is going to come on Saturday, and then we might need to put it to bed. But I think it sets up really well. Third up winner last prep, albeit that was over 1,100 metres. But I just think, love the setup. I like this form compared to the other form lines in the race. I want to be with Delicious Boulevard in race 4. The next race I'm going to, 2 selections here, is in race 6. Now, absolutely petrified of the international visitor called Royal Champion. So if there's market support for it, then I know that we're in big trouble. So just going to have to watch the market with Royal Champion. It's got some big time form numbers over in the UK. It's a really, really good horse, but 1,400 metres first up with 61.5. Could blow them away, but I'm around it just because I want to be with some fit horses, and I want to be with some horses that are around Chrysaor, which we spoke about, that's going to the Epsom. They're both out of this form line race. They're both first up. Aaron Bay's the first one. Comes to hand really quick. So it's off about 147 days. I thought it was pretty good. This is a horse that can sit on speed, control the tempo around $8, $8.50. I think it's a great bet. As I said, second up record's outstanding. Sit in the first 4 or 5, be hard to beat. And Macram's the other one who, again, just had no luck in that race behind Chrysaor and obviously Aaron Bay as well. Again, it was first up. You go back last prep this horse, Flemington 1,400 metres did its best ever figure. That's what we've got on Saturday. Beat horses like Jimmy Star, Savannah Cloud, Berkeley Square, those kinds of horses. They'd be starting much short of price favourite in this kind of race. Look, he might be a bit of a Goldilocks horse, Macram, but I think he's a big track horse that sets up really well. So at $17, I've got to have something on him. I'm trusting that form line and that race, those 2 coming out of. So they're the 3 selections for me for my Victorian set. Okay, snap or don't snap. So we've been on a roll with this, JJ. In the last 4 weeks, we actually haven't missed in terms of which way they're going, whether they're going to be drifting or they're going to be firming. So that's a positive thing that we've been able to help for the punters. I'm going to get you to kick off if you can, because I think yours sort of start, at least one of them starts off a little bit early. So I think you've got 3. If you want to kick off proceedings, please.
I do. Race number 2 is the first one. Now, this horse is $9, so you're probably thinking, why are you picking a $9 pop?
I did think that.
Well, the reason is this market's a small field, right? They're about 121% at the moment, the market percentage. Now, I reckon this horse will double in its price. So it's 9 at the moment. I reckon it'll jump closer to 18. If it does that, that's a 5% increase, I suppose, as far as the punters are concerned. So if you take the 5% out of that 121% market, you get down to 116. Now, this market will probably jump 117. So if you're right and this horse is going to drift, you're pretty much saying that the rest of them are not going to drift. So I think it's worth noting because there's 3 horses in the race that'll all be popular. Gold Rush Guru, my tip, Athanatos, and also Talisay, some sort of horses that have been right around the mark. So the reason I include that horse is because if you want to back one of those other 3, I would say there's not a lot of room for other horses to drift, which means they probably hold their price, if not shorten. The next of the horses I'm potting is race number 6, Chicado. Now, I'm only potting the price. I'm not potting the horse. It's $2.30, this horse. Look, it's got some ability, no doubt. I think it'll make a nice horse over a bit further. It trialled okay at Strathalbyn, but it doesn't look like a jump and run sharp horse to me. It's clear top pick. I think if you do want to back it, which obviously people do, because it's been $4.20 into $2.30, I think, at present, I would say keep your powder dry. You'll get $2.50. If I was tipping in the race, I'd definitely have it on top, but I just think $2.30 is not worth taking now. You're better off waiting. You'll get 6-4 or better. And then race number 8, a horse called Bristler. I've laid this horse that many times or made it a don't snap, and it's done me absolute favours every time. I think the horse might be gone, to be honest. So if you want to back it, I'd say wait. It's $6. It seems to stay short in the market, but I'm almost convinced the horse is finished in terms of winning races in this sort of ratings band.
All right, so there's the 3 don't snaps for JJ in Adelaide, and a good little whack for Bristler out there. I've got 4. Again, they're all don't snap, so keep your powder dry on these ones. Sergeant Major in race 3. Now, really impressed with his performance 1,200 metres first up and sort of wanted to be with it wherever it went. And I went to 1,400 metres last start, and it was just plain. And to be honest, I haven't got the race going that well. It's drawn gate 1. I don't know where it gets to from the map because I don't think it's got great tactical speed, so it could end up 3 back rail. That's a bit of a trick as well. And then 14 to 1,800 metres for me is a really tricky type of step in distance to be able to get to. So it's around that $3.10. I just think you're going to get a better price about Sergeant Major in race 3. Race 4, the next race, Comanche Miss. It's around $6. Again, I just don't think you need to snap at that price. I think it's going to probably get closer to double figures. I've marked it into the double figure range for Comanche Miss. So I think it can probably sit on speed, but just don't know if there's much guts behind that in terms of a form profile. I think it's going to drift, Comanche Miss. Then we go to race 9, a bit of a talking horse, and a horse I'm a big fan of is Magic Time. It's just first up here and a drawn gate 1 up the straight, which might not be an advantage, especially if it stays dry. It's got the glue-on shoes, which not the end of the world for me, but just obviously some type of issues there that you have to factor in. And the other factor as well is it's coming off 2 pretty ordinary runs in Queensland. Had a great prep and then just sort of fell off the face of the earth a little bit, Magic Time. So I just want to see it come back. Again, around $5.50 for Magic Time. I think the market's going to take a set against that horse. I think you'll get a better price. And in the last race, I think it's going to be a horse the punters will be definitely latching onto. It's around that $3.80, $3.90 called Skybird. Plenty of ability. Gate 18 around the circle here at Flemington. I just think it's going to get to a really, really awkward spot with 57.5 kilos, which is only in fair for its rating band. I know it's against the mares, but it's going to have to go a long way back from gate 18. I don't think they're going to use this horse up. If they do, well then, the price probably holds. But I think they're going to have to go a long way back, and hence why I think that price has to drift for Skybird. So in essence, I've got 4 don't snaps. JJ's got 3. That's 7 in total. I think if you want to back those horses, go for your life. But as we say, just wait till the death. You'll get a better price. Pin the tail time. Scoreboard, it's starting to get a little bit embarrassing, to be honest. 7-4 to the greater. Obviously, last week was I Wish I Win on the Friday night. The points bet starting price was $5. JJ went with $4.40 and I went with $5. So $5. Oh, that's exactly what it was. So there you go.
You're lucky that rain didn't come.
There's a lot of things. You've got to understand. A lot of those things. There's a lot of those things that come into that. So anyway, it's 7-4. 7-4. This week we're going via Sistina, and to be honest, spoke to you sort of before we'd started this. Then we do it separately and go off and then come back and convene at the end. And I was like, she's just an impossible horse for me to try and work out how to price her. And when I price the Turnbull. I've got her favourite in my Turnbull Stakes market. So I'll start with that. And then I'll go in the Randvitt. So 4 Australian starts, JJ. $2.30 in the Randvitt. Queen Elizabeth, she starts at $1.85. $11 in the Winx, where she was a little bit soft and the only time she's been soft in the market. And then Makybe Diva at 1,600 metres on this track a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, she starts $2.60. So that SP is anchoring her down. As I say, I've got her favourite in my Turnbull Stakes market, but that price is $5.50, which is very different to, I think, probably what a lot of other price assessors have. But that's where I've landed with Via Sistina this week in the Turnbull Stakes for Pin the Tail. You, a little bit shorter, I think.
Yeah, I've got her 460. I don't have a favourite. I've got Buckaroo Mark favourite, actually.
Yep.
I've got Buckaroo favourite. I've got her about 475 or something. So I thought she might jump about 460. I've got a couple of queries on her. One, the Melbourne direction. She's got to prove that she likes that. I admittedly haven't looked through many of her international runs to see how many were in that direction. But the Sydney runs, obviously, some good ratings there. But Melbourne, I just want to see it again. The other thing I query is whether she likes a strong tempo. You mentioned a couple of the runs she's been in and when she's gone well. Queen Elizabeth in a strong tempo with Pride of Jenny out in front, she was playing. I know she ran second and beat them, but she beat sort of horses that she should have beaten by further, given the tempo, I thought, by not that much. So I thought the Queen Elizabeth was a plain run. The Rambit and the Winks, where she was impressive in both, they were both crawls. And then last start, she was poor as well with a bit of tempo on. So I don't know. I want to see her this way around. I want to see her with a strong tempo, being able to absorb it and still finish off. Because at the moment, she looks like a horse that travels well on a slow tempo and can dash, quite well. But for mine, I'm happy to risk a little bit. I'd probably want 650 to have a bet, but I think she might jump about 460 because you said the SPs in the past have been very short.
Yeah. So she's a really interesting one. There's going to be, I think, a wide range in terms of punters out there who are probably going to even mark her in and around shorter than $3, possibly just from whatever factor to, maybe up to what I've got her around that $5.50. So going to be interesting to see what the market does. I don't have a big issue with her in a fast run tempo, and I also think the Turnbull Stakes probably will play into her favour a little bit because I haven't got much tempo in the Turnbull Stakes, but maybe going that Melbourne way could be an issue for her because she has failed in the European races as well, going that way. So there's a bit in that, but that's the Pin the Tail this week for Via Sistina. All right, last segment of the show here. Plays of the day. I'm going with race 4, Flemington Tglici Boulevard, around that $2.60. I think she's a bet. I think she can settle in the first 3 or 4. She's only third up. I think this is going to be her peak run for the prep. I think she's got the best turn of foot. I want to be with her. And JJ, I think we have to wait till the last in Adelaide for yours.
Added responsibility when you're tipping your best of the day in the last. You know that people that were umming and ahhing throughout the day, by the time they come to the last and they're behind, they all of a sudden they're in your
You're either
camp.
Getting them out or you're kicking them off into a great, an absolute feast. So good luck with that, my friend.
They blame the whole day on you if your horse gets beaten in the last. But I think Tipper can do it for us. It's a very reliable horse, very genuine horse. So Tipper in the last for me. It'll roll forward. Rochelle Milne's riding well. Has ridden this horse 5 times, I reckon, for 2 wins and 3 placings. So she gets along well with the horse. Currently $2.90, I think $3 if you're shopping well. I don't think it'll drift. I think it'll probably hold its price. But I think it'll be very, very hard to beat. So Tipper in the last to bring it home for everyone.
All right, so there's our plays of the day for this week on Turnbull Stakes Day and Epsom Handicap Day. So it's a big day. I think some horses you'll be able to follow with confidence in the next 2 weeks when we see them again, and there'll be some horses you just say, nah, not for me over this spring carnival. So it's going to be an important day for a lot of horses and connections. We'll see you next week. Thanks, JJ. That was good fun, and I'll see you next week too. Hope you enjoyed that, punters. If you can, like and subscribe.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.